everyone, today we're looking at career to see what they've got for us in 9.8. What is a lot better that you might not have picked up on just yet since the new changes. To start today, it's not that often that a build is the thumbnail of my weird Korean builds video, and then a week later it's a legitimate pick that is being used everywhere. That is Nautilus mid, but we're going to start with support because that's a bit more normal, and now at least in career, probably one of the best supports. All the way from ranking 23rd of the champions being played support to number 1, literally, that's not a bad shift for overnight. A lot of it is coming from the first 25 minutes, which is maybe like 1 to 3 items for Fed champions, that kind of phase in the game. He's an excellent hooker, like it's so deadly. You hit that, someone's probably going to die there. Blowing sums at least though, but probably actually even with blowing your sums, you might even die. The Q damage was buffed, right? The follow-up snare from the passive was buffed as well, holding people in place just a little bit longer. It's kind of sad, but as a tank, he probably can solo kill the enemy AD carry at level 6 quite easily if he starts to get a little bit ahead and he has his ignite up. Also though, he is very good against a lot of meta AD carries because his crowd control is point and click with his ultimate. You cannot dodge that, and it sets up the rest of his combo. Like, you really cannot outplay it. Somebody like Vayne relies on our mobility and cutting around to actually survive fights. Locked down by Nautilus ult that you can't do anything about. That kind of sucks. You've got your build as well, which is helping. Zeke's is the DPS boost to your AD carry, so even though you don't have a sensor, you help them in another way. You will likely get the full benefit out of that as well because you keep them in the zone around you. So early game, 10 out of 10. Mid game, maybe like a 7. Still very good. Good engage. A frontliner with a massive teamfight ult. Late game, he starts to get shred a little bit though. People have more defense. That ultimate doesn't really do as much as it would have, so don't drag the game too late. Nautilus mid is the other side of this, right? Not actually a troll build. There are 2 ways you can play it. So the first one is a fun way, which is like proto belt into AP afterwards. That's actually pretty good, and you burst really hard. The more sensible way, and this is also mid lane, Abyssal Mask to counter AP or Iceborne Gauntlet for AD, and then you go tanky or like a mix of tank and damage. Normally when I say fun versus sensible, the sensible is just much better, right? But fun is actually 100% viable, and it is really strong. Nautilus has insane AP ratios on his abilities, and that's why that works. And he'll be able to nuke people down with his full combo, and again, it is point and click. He's almost like an assassin, as weird as it sounds. I know it's weird, but like I think that's the only way to describe him. You get hit by his Q and the follow-up damage probably means you're dead. Normally the downside to an assassin is if they get caught first, they probably die. But with Nautilus, you're naturally very tanky, right? You can survive. You have good wave clear with your E to push and contain the enemy mid laner. It's a strange pick, but that is how good his damage is right now anyway. He can work as a mid laner, especially versus immobile things or like low health. So Ryze, LeBlanc, Zed, Cassiopeia, stuff like that is normally very difficult to lock down and get on top of, but Nautilus really solves that. Moving away from that guy now, which has taken up a lot of this video actually, but he's just so strong. Anyway, Amumu was buffed in 9.8, right? Bit more passive damage, a better cooldown on his Q, and then a quality of life fix to make that follow people who dash as it attaches to them. So the thing is, Amumu never does well in Korea. Like, never, honestly. People invade him constantly, and they just like crap on him early game, basically. He doesn't stand a chance, and he can't fight back. He's still not good early because of that, right? Koreans will invade him. They are hyper-aggressive early on their junglers especially, but he is amazing at 3 items, that big team fight stage that kind of decides the game. For the first time, this is kind of showing up in Plat Plus games, by the way, where people are better and should play around him a bit more and actually invade. At lower ranks, so like gold, silver, bronze, and iron, he is even stronger because people don't invade him and he can reach that late game stage. If you let him get his items, get to those big fights and stuff, he's actually insanely good. Also, he's a lot like Nautilus. He abuses Aftershock so he can go in, not get nuked, and build full damage. Like Proto Belt is way more popular over there for the extra burst, but also getting range for your Q or your ultimate. He is really good as well with other AP champions because of the passive and the true damage, and I bet his win rate would be a lot higher if we put him with 2+ other AP champs on his team. You can also play him tank, by the way, as well. Cinderhulk just got buffed. It helps him farm a bit more, makes him kind of tanky, kind of damage. That is a safe way to play it. Cinderhulk, Abyssal Mask, Frozen Heart, Leandry's Rylai's makes him mega tanky, but he will still kill you eventually as well. Another buff that we had in 9.8 was to Renekton to give him slightly better base stats and also make his Q better. Mostly it is Q better when he's around more than one champion though. The healing is up on all parts of it, but that's really where you're going to feel the difference more. Hit 3 people and you would heal for 100 more than before, which is a lot. Renekton is kind of seen as like a counter pick to a lot of meta stuff at the moment that people like to play, like a Riven or an Irelia. He's being banned quite a lot in games right now by my top laners normally, and his ban rate doubled in career from last patch, so people definitely don't like playing against him. Spear of Sojin also gives him everything that he wants. It is becoming a lot more popular now as Renekton becomes popular as well. Health, cooldown reduction, AD, a really good item on him. We sometimes rush it, but they get it more in the middle in career. What they do though is they rush a Guardian Angel second item, and I know that sounds really weird. It's definitely not normal. It's not everyone, by the way, but it is the most popular second item now. It does let you dive in more freely, and if you get a lead, you won't be that easy to kill anyway, let alone kill twice, and especially if you tag in Asterix after that for the extra shield. I don't know if this is a major reason why as well, but it does does work with this with the new bounty system, right? Renekton probably gets a lead in most games, right? Gets a few kills, and then if he dies and gives that gold over, that would swing it back to the other person, which is really dangerous for Renekton who doesn't scale. So protecting it is even more important. That is the main way that people beat him, right? This is why top laners hate playing against him, because they have to outlast him in a game. He isn't going to power up like a Riven or something like that, but he does have more chance now to smash a lane hard enough that he can end before others catch up, or at least grow a really big lead. We have mentioned that next one a few times before, but Glacial Ahri is probably one of the strongest builds we have for mid lane right now in 9.8. I really want to point this out though. So Ahri is amazing as a beginner champion, right? Ultra safe, pushes really hard, does everything, and is a really good champion to learn the role. She is never seen though as a really high skill cap champion, so rarely played at higher ranks because they can't really show just how good they are as players. Right now though, on this patch suddenly, this build has close to one of the highest win rates in the entire game at Diamond Plus. That is so backwards to what we usually see, right? It's higher at that level than it is at lower ranks where it's normally the other way around. So what is different, right? Why does this build make her so much better? It really turns Ahri from a one-dimensional champion where I have to hit my charm to do anything to way more useful, way easier to hit that charm and not just a safe pick. The way this all works as well, as I'm sure most of you know, but just in case you don't, is that when you slow with the GLP or the Twin Shadows active, Glacial Augment sends out the slow ray that slows everybody on it. That makes hitting your Q or your E extremely easy, right? Almost impossible to dodge actually without a flash, and then you still have good damage to burst them down afterwards. It is really good for catching people, but it's really good when people chase into you as well, and you can slow them and then turn around afterwards. And Ahri, especially with Twin Shadows, then ultimates to follow up from further away. It is a very strong laning build though. This is the main thing about it and why Korea is hyper aggressive early, so they're playing her a lot. You're the strongest early to mid game, where the base damage of your abilities and stuff means a bit more, and you can still one-shot everybody with a charm even though you aren't building the highest damage output item. If you're not using this and you really want to climb as a mid laner, you play some Ahri anyway, you probably want to give this a go. It is really powerful at the moment. By the way, just before we move on to our other one, this is also being used on Morgana right now, Vel'Koz, Malzahar, Talia. It's really got on all of those, and actually a few more as well. Our next one was buffed in this patch as well, but it was a tiny bit of attack speed, which I honestly didn't really think would make that much of a difference. Camille got gutted as a jungler, but her top lane play now is probably one of the most underrated picks in the entire game. It's got that solo carry potential again. You can duel really well, shut down other laners, roam around with your ultimate, and as soon as you hit those item spikes, you really start to carry. That is even if you're behind as well. You get a Trinity Force, you get your Hydra, you get the Sterix, and once complete, they give you a really big boost and a way back into the game. That's great for solo queue because you might make mistakes and you might get behind, but if you are ahead, you can easily press R on somebody and just dick an AD carry or mid laner without any issue, and that's kind of the scary part. A lot of matchups are skill based as well, depending on whether you hit your stuns. You dodge really key things with your ultimate, which is so important. Like a Jax can be pretty tough, right? But if you dodge his counter strike with your ultimate, then you stand a much better chance of winning the fight. There are a lot of different ways you can play her as well. Well, build is like the most vanilla thing ever. Like you can't really mix it up. You build the same every single game. The keystones are different though. Conqueror is really good on her, especially as most of your damage is ramping up and not front load anyway, so you can really use the healing and the true damage. Kleptomancy can get you rich during the lane phase, especially versus a tank, and technically is our highest win rate page right now, I think, going free boots, biscuits, and cosmic insight. You can actually even go aftershock, but that's probably more because the keystone is busted than anything else, but if you miss your stun, you can't proc it, so it's not always that good. Next one, I'm grouping 3 into 1. So we mentioned it kind of for a Mumu, but Cinderhulk was buffed to burn for more damage in the jungle, and this change helped a lot of tanks get back into the meta more. I know a lot of people won't be happy about that, but there are 3 that I noticed a ton. So Sejuani the most, Rammus, and also Nunu. We're going to focus mostly on Sejuani because that is the one they play the most, but she also got a buff to her W damage in the same patch. Just quickly for the other 2 though, so Rammus is an anti-AD, but actually needs items to do that in the first place. One of the worst early game tanks in the game because he farms slowly and can get really far behind. Thankfully though, the Cinderhulk buff really helps him spend less time in the jungle, reach 2 items, which is normally Thornmail, and then he's full stride into teamfights. Nunu is a bit different, not the best early game, even though his ganks with Snowball are really good, but after Cinderhulk is basically impossible to kill because of the mix of health, defense, and healing. He's got way more crowd control than anyone else really. He will die quicker though, and falls off later as AD carries pick up their last whisper, and the healing isn't going to be enough to keep him alive. So Sejuani is kind of the middle ground. Best of both, not as weak early game, better ganks with her stun, and then a really strong mid game with the engage. She does become a bit more of a meat shield, and as like a pure defense tank, I guess she's not quite as strong, but thankfully she has a bit more damage, which kind of makes up for that. If she can get ahead early through those ganks, then she is great at helping her team and snowballing out of control, and that is why people are playing her a lot more. So we only have 1 AD this patch because nothing has changed for a while. It's pretty stable. There's no major item or champion updates. Sivir did change though on this patch. She is like the best win rate AD and looks to be almost unstoppable with a lethal tempo build. So most people go fleet, which is also fine. It works as well, but lethal tempo gets off your W ricochets way faster and that can crit through the entire team. It's a lot of your damage. She is so strong right now that she has no obvious weak phase in the game except maybe at 2 items. Early game you can punish her and she isn't that strong, but you're pushing most of the time. Her Q is buffed as well to be better early, so that helps you push, helps you fight. You can fight more if you have to, but you can just push and stop them killing you. 2 items is that slight dip where you're okay. You're not going to be weak or anything, but you aren't going to face roll teams yourself yet, especially because Korea love going Essence Reaver first and not Infinity Edge. That Infinity Edge comes 3rd now instead, and that means you're back to smashing at that point. That is your strongest phase in the game. 3 to 4 items is where Sivir shines, and that is luckily where most of our huge game deciding fights actually happen and where most games end. The best thing about this as well is that because Sivir also farms like a god, like really easily with her W and Q, you tend to get 3 items quicker than most other AD carries, which really helps get to that power point. They've also gone back to PD second most of the time. It was rapid fire for a bit, now it's PD, so she's got a spell shield to block something, right? A shield on the PD, the speed from her ultimate, and range from her W bounces. That makes her so hard to shut down, and meanwhile she's going to be at the back shredding through your entire team. The one bad thing about Sivir is that she cannot really duel somebody who can burst her very quickly like a Draven or a Vayne, and yes, Vayne does count as burst off the Rage Spade. So that's going to wrap up our look into Korea. Thank you for watching the video our entire way through. Tomorrow we're going to look at our best champions and then a few tier lists after that and then future changes for 9.9. So keep an eye out for those the next week. Thank you for watching though till the end, and for now I will leave you with robots.